The club rugby landscape has witnessed huge upheaval in the last few years. From the swathes of teams leaving Super Rugby, to 4 English pro clubs going out of business, to the unexpected success of the URC. No one could have foreseen where we are today, even as little as 5 years ago. The big 4 domestic leagues, URC, Top 14, Super Rugby and the English Premiership, are embroiled in a desperate struggle for power as they compete for both audiences and for the signatures of rugby's biggest stars. But which of these leagues is the real top dog? We gathered together a broadcasting industry insider and a data analyst to crunch the numbers and answer this very question. You tweeted a bit of an infographic at the weekend, mate, and it caused a bit of a stir. So this was Sports Pro. Is that the company, Sports Pro?
Yeah, Sports Pro.
Tweeted the values of the rugby TV deal. So why don't you just talk us through what that graphic showed and why it caused a bit of consternation?
So basically, they just did a comparison. They basically showed the top 5 most valuable domestic club rugby competitions in the world in terms of broadcast deals. Number 1, obviously, is the top 14 with their new agreement, which is worth a whopping 696 million. Now that includes top 14 and the Pro D2. But basically, annually, that means that the top 14 is worth 128 million euro, which is absolutely crazy. So they're number 1, obviously the top 14. So the graph is in dollars. So we've got basically the amount per season. In terms of top 14, they're clearly on top, 151 million. Next is Super Rugby Pacific, which is worth $81.2 million a season. But the big caveat with that figure is that includes rights to Australia and New Zealand national team games.
I think that's crazy cheeky, including New Zealand and Wallabies games in that deal. Like that, how much? Keno, speculate off the top of the head. How much of that deal is coming from those international tests? Bear in mind that Australia and New Zealand play more test matches than any other nation.
I was going to say, I mean, that's a fierce number of matches, but is it exclusive rights? Is it cable-only rights? These things are so complex. It's literally impossible to say what proportion of it is the international games. What you can say is it's going to be a fair whack. It's going to be a lot of money. I mean, New Zealand's international tests.
Yeah.
TV
So that's
rights.
when you look at Sky buying the Super Rugby rights as well. It's always Sansa rights, so that they're picking up the Summer Internationals, the Rugby Championship, etc. So, and we all know that's why Sky buy those rights as well. So it's probably, as you said, kind of like impossible to put an actual figure on it, but that's what they have in this graph. So that definitely caused quite a stir, and so did the competition that came in third, which is the URC, coming in at $70 million per season, which is roughly, I think, 55 million pounds sterling.
Imagine we were allowed to include Ireland and South Africa test matches in that value.
Yeah. Now that figure has been hotly contested by a lot of people who are going a bit crazy at me, and I keep just pointing them towards the source of these stats. I didn't create these graphs, but yeah, nevertheless, they're having a go at me. Then we have the Premiership in fourth and it's worth $42.9 million per season. So we all know, I've kind of shared this a good bit, that their next right cycle, which is over the course of 2 years, it's only worth 31.5 roughly million pounds sterling per year, which is down from a peak of about 40 million previously. And then in fifth, we've got the Pro D2 worth 11.6 million.
It's worth saying as well that the Prem have got the shortest deal out of any of those, haven't they? Just at 2 years.
Just a 2-year deal, yeah. 100%, yeah.
Going back to the URC one, you have to remember that deal was signed before the URC was a thing. That was a kind of a gamble. Now, there's been a lot of churn as well, because we had Viaplay take over Premier Sports and then go back again. Viaplay went bust. And the question that I see you get asked more than anything else is, how much money do the URC clubs make from TV revenue, and how does that money get divided? But as you alluded to, Cian, there are so many broadcasters. There's 5 nations in the URC. There's so many broadcasters, and there's nothing to say that all of their deals are up for renewal at the same time, coming in and out. Like, so, and is it just going to be one of those questions that's just impossible to really truly answer? Is how much the URC is really worth?
It is, but I also know the source of this data. So like Sports Pro did publish an article previously, and they said, that's the original post where they said it's worth 55 million pounds sterling per season, and they got that figure. They sourced themselves an article in the Financial Times, and in that article by the Financial Times, that was the reported figure. And I think they said something along the lines of, somebody close to the deal said it was worth this in terms of revenue, and apparently the previous one was worth about 25 million pounds sterling per season. So Words weren't just pulling this number out of the air. They got it from the Financial Times. And that deal, so this was actually the first, so that figure is based on the URC as we know it now, which was basically, so most broadcasters signed up for 4 years. So that would have been the one originally signed with Premier Sports, RTE in Ireland, TG Card, they both signed up for 4-year deals. The BBC signed up for a 4-year deal, except BBC Northern Ireland, whose deal actually runs out this season. And I've asked for comment from the URC. They have not said if that deal is going to be renewed. The BBC Wales deal is on for another year, so they are set there. And that figure, of course, didn't include URC TV figures, but obviously the big one too is SuperSport, and I believe that's a 4-year deal as well. Which it's very difficult to test that or to validate that. I'd love to hear from a club themselves to see if it's anywhere close. But yeah, this number hasn't just been pulled out of thin air. Like there has been some research done by this in fairness to Sports Pro.
Who wants to come in there, Cian?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it's a complex. I mean, that the URC one is a multi-nation, and I mean, not only nation, but geographical nations, and the rights packages within those can be extremely complex.
Yeah.
So the fact that they managed to put one number on the lot of it is great. You've no idea what distribution deals are then underlying that, and there's really no without getting a full set of accounts. And to be honest, nobody wants to do that. I used to do that. Nobody wants to do that.
And even that reported figure for the Premiership at 31, like again, that's what the Times are reporting. Like we don't know, but you can always tell when they announce look at the difference between the announcement for TNT Sports and Premiership Rugby about their new renewal for 2 years. There was no mention of a figure, so it's obviously down, or else it was there the same. And then the top 14 come out and they're thrown out. Like they provided those stats in terms of how much the top 14 is worth compared to 42 and how much of an increase it was. So both Canal Plus and Eleanor were happy to talk about that. So when competitions aren't talking about that, that the deal isn't fantastic, shall we say. But I suppose quite the stir.
Went digging around actually myself for viewership stats, which I kind of thought give us an idea of kind of where they're at in terms of each other, but also would give you an idea of how happy they are to publicize their viewership stats. Super Rugby
do not like telling people how many people
they're pretty
watch
keen on
their
telling
product.
people a percentage of increase and not actual numbers of anything. Top 14, very happy to tell people that their final last year had an average of 980,000 people looking at it on Canal Plus, not on public carrier. I think it might have been TV5, which was in the multiples of millions. It was ridiculous. So that is, by far and away top of the pile.
I watched.
I wasn't able to
get.
Okay. Yeah, to the TV5 month. It was brilliant. So the other one who I wasn't able to get regular season viewership figures for was the Prem, which last year had an average of 349,000 on BT Sports, and that gives you an idea. Literally on cable subscription only basis, top 14 had literally three times the average viewership, and pretty much actually 3 times the peak viewership as well. It was 1.18 million peak versus 480k peak. So that's just for a final. It doesn't tell the whole story. And then regular season for Super Rugby, because of 2 areas. I got some for Australia and some for New Zealand. Australia, I think average was 166,000 per game free to air and 107,000 on cable. Now that's average viewerships, which as you can see is pretty low. In New Zealand is reported as an average of 167,000 per round on cable, which is incredibly low, given that they reported a high of 482,000 for Chiefs Raiders I'm not sure. It looks like it looked a bit dodgy. So it could be 167,000 per game, slightly higher than Australia, but really nothing to shout about. Whereas the URC, again, very happy to share their viewership figures. Regular season last year, they had an average of 231,000 per game.
Yep.
Which is again, like I'd say that's combined statistics between cable and free to air, but nonetheless, that's a lot of eyes on the games, and the playoff games averaged 575,000 per game. So the URC doing pretty well. And the other one thing to bear in mind about the top 14 is, yes, it's a very large deal, but they also have by far the most number of matches of any of the leagues, because they all play each other twice. There's no.
Did you work that out? The
systems
per match.
I did a little bit of sleuthing and a little bit of working out. It was 100. It's 191 matches per season in the top 14, which works out at €790,000 per match on the basis of that deal, which is actually less than Super Rugby, which has 91 matches. This is including the knockout matches, by the way, because obviously they're part of the deal, which actually gets 890,000 per match. So in terms of player minutes, the Super Rugby deal, well, the Super Rugby deal that also includes the Australian and New Zealand internationals. So we have absolutely no idea. It's probably close to equivalent-ish on a kind of a game-by-game basis with the top 14. And then the URC and the Prem. The URC has 151 matches per season. The Prem has 93 currently. But on a per-match basis, their TV deals are worth the same. They're 460K per match each.
Yeah.
I think the cat has muted you.
That's it, saying you'll never know the fantastically witty and insightful thing that I said. But the cat did mute me, yes. Okay, right. That was an extremely highbrow and interesting discussion, and I'm glad that we had it.
Armour coming back on the inside. We'd switch a play from Ross Byrne. Great soccer skills. The bounce the ball falls on his side.